Thank you, Susan. Susan Reynolds, karmic astrologer. And I'm India Lee, intuitive reader. And we are getting together to talk about the energies of May 2025. And of course, that's Taurus season and a whole bunch of other planetary shifts.
We're
We've
good.
got
We're good.
planets moving into energies that we can't even keep track of. But
Everything is going on and all the
yeah,
planets are shifting around. Yeah.
musical chairs. And that, yes.
A
And
nice good
and
way to put it.
that the best um, approach to these energies in May is going to be as open as possible, as trusting as you possibly can that everything's carrying you in the right direction, that you are carrying you in the right direction. Because as Susan and I were just talking about, trusting your own higher guidance that has led you to this point, trusting where that's leading you. It can be tricky because sometimes we definitely get in our head and like, what have I done? Where am I? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, the big news in May is that on May 26th, Saturn is going to enter the sign of Aries. And so for the last 2.5 years, depending on your chart, it may be almost 3 years, but the last 2.5 years, Saturn has been in Pisces. And that's a beautiful sign. I love Pisces. It's very intuitive, very psychic, extremely woo-woo, very compassionate and caring, but also a little airy-fairy. Pisces is like, well, let me meditate on that. Well, I'll wait for a sign, or I'll kind of know when it's the right time. Pisces wants to tune in to higher levels, and they don't really want to address ugly things. Love and light, peace on earth. But Aries is the complete opposite. So Saturn is the planet that deals with our career. It deals with our work. It deals with our professional life. How do we put ourselves out there in the world? How do we use our authority? How do we react to authority? So a lot of this Saturn energy is about leadership. And of course, Saturn can also be about a parent, because I don't care how old we get, our parents still know they're our parent, like, by God, I
Yeah.
am your mother, I am your father, and I have final say over you. So there's a lot of these very strong energies, because think about the work you do. It's at least 8 hours a day. Sometimes if you're self-employed like I am, or India's, it's a lot more than 8 hours a day. If you are working for yourself, you never stop working. So this is a big part of our life. And that energy is getting ready to make a major shift. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but Aries wants to do. It wants to act. It's like, screw this love and light. I'll wait for a sign. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make this change. I'm going to make this shift. So we're all sort of, without realizing it, ready to start moving into something new, something different, even something more exciting. Because Aries loves excitement. It loves a little spicy danger going on in there. It's not afraid of taking a chance. Aries is very individual. It is the first sign of the zodiac. So Saturn in Aries says, what makes me happy in my professional life? What kind of work do I want to do? What kind of leader do I want to be? And so we're much more ready to step out and be a leader. We're much more ready to take a little bit of a chance, to start saying, well, maybe I can retire early. Maybe if I put this aside or make these changes, I can move into this. Even if I can't do that profession full time right now, maybe I can start doing it part time. So Aries is going to start to encourage us to stop putting things off and start taking action and doing it.
Yeah. And it feels like this beautiful blend of Aries and Taurus energies we've got going on because course, most of May we are in, and currently we're in the energy of Taurus, which is very earthly, very grounded, very much about the real world and the physical world and the sensory world, what we can
Mhm.
taste and see and feel and hear and smell. And it's a slower moving energy. We want to slow down, we want to smell the flowers, we want to enjoy the sun. And then you add that big bag of Aries energy in all those different planetary placements, Venus and Saturn, like you just said, moving into it,
And Neptune is
and
now also in
Neptune.
Aries.
Yeah, and it's this interesting and alchemizing blend of fire, ambition, um, action, let's do it, and earthly. So I imagine on the good side, we'll have times where it's like, okay, I'm ready to make that change in my real life, whether that's a home, a job, a relationship, you're ready to make a real change and you're ready to take action that's in alignment with yourself and with what you love. And I also imagine in some cases that might feel like a butting of energetic heads, where it's like Aries is like, let's go, and Taurus is like, no.
Let's think about this a little bit.
Not right now. Let check with me later. Exactly. Exactly.
Aries is very impulsive, but Taurus wants to think things through.
Mm.
So you can have an impulsive action and then go, oh, maybe I should have thought about that a little more. Let me regroup and think about this.
Mhm.
Aries rules our temper. And so we may find ourselves becoming more easily irritated. You know, it doesn't mean we have to explode at people, but we may be more annoyed at being stuck in traffic or a long line at the grocery store or, whatever it is. We
Mhm.
may not be as calm and centered as we want to be. We may just find ourselves having an attitude, you know?
And also, I know Mars being in Leo can make that happen too, because Mars is like the ruling planet of Aries. Let's go, let's take action. And then Leo is like, and it's about me. And, you know,
Leo is another fire sign.
yeah.
So we've got Venus in a fire sign, we've got Mars in a fire sign, we've got Saturn in a fire sign, we've got Neptune in a fire sign. Now, I happen to love fire energies. They're warm, they're engaging, they're very people oriented. With all this fire going on, especially with Mars being in Leo all month long, we may be more social than usual. Even if you're typically kind of reserved or quiet or shy, just like staying home, you may be a little bit more, let's get out and do something. Let's see some friends. Oh, I'm going to accept that invitation to a party because Leo loves to have a good time. Leo loves to get out there and mix and mingle and schmooze. And if you are artistic at all, which I am not at all, but if you are, this is very creative. Depending on where that Leo energy is going to fall in your chart, you may have wonderful new ideas about a new book you want to write, a art project you want to work on. Even if, let's say, this new Mars and Leo energy falls in your area of business, you may have some creative new idea of, oh, this is how I'm going to land that new client. I'm going to propose this. This creative energy can come out in all different kinds of ways. It is
Mhm.
not limited to the arts. And
Nice.
so if this is coming out in your seventh house, this can be very passionate.
Yeah.
This can be you talk to your partner, let's get away for the weekend. Let's just do something fun, you know.
Yeah. And I feel like that Leo energy as well as Taurus energy, they both are quite childlike and it's a time of play and it's like just enjoy. You don't have to put too much thought into things. Let yourself just enjoy. And certainly Aries doesn't put a ton of thought into things at times. So it might be in a more impulsive time. Um, but also bringing the lessons of these past few months with us as we do that. It's like, okay, I want to follow what my inner child is saying. I want to not hold this part of me back. But at the same time, can I do that in a way where I'm being a truly loving guardian to myself, not just throwing myself into things that I've done before that didn't work out so well? Can I bring a little more awareness? I am seeing as I look at the cards for the month ahead, I'm seeing that it will be a time when we really need to trust and work with spirit, however you think of that, the universe, flow, your higher self, God, really work with that as a relationship of um, turning over the parts of you where you only know how to do things the old way. So when I'm talking about like, oh, would I throw myself into a situation that wouldn't have worked out so well in the past? no, but spirit, I don't really know what to do. And then trust that you'll be shown the higher way, the more elevated way, because how could any of us know how to do things in a better, higher, more elevated way other than to be shown? I am saying that this is going to be a time where there's a wheel of fortune here, so there will definitely be a destined pivotal moment for each of us that does involve, all right, I only know the old way. Let spirit show me the new way in a very big way. For some of us, this will be relationships. For some of us, this will be work related or all of the above. But trusting that you're on the right track and you don't have to know, you will be shown. And it'll be bittersweet because just like anything new, you'll be like, but the old was familiar. I knew how to do that. And moving into the new can feel like, what have I done sometimes? But then you go, oh, right, this is good.
Sometimes we just forget to ask. We're
Yeah.
so used to just getting up and embracing the day and doing what we need to do that we forget we
Yes.
can ask for help. We're allowed. That's not looked at as a weakness, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's actually looked at as more of a strength. Yeah.
once we call on our guides, call on our angels, we are strengthening that connection to them. The more you talk to somebody, the more you get to know them, the stronger that connection is.
Yeah.
I'm also going to say, I love some of these energies. I'm excited about these energies, but I'm also going to say, Mars and Leo can spend some money. It's new clothes, vacations, nice dinners, whatever it is, they can spend some money. And the impulsiveness of all this Aries energy is not going to say no to them. The
Yeah.
whole
Venus and Aries is like, go ahead.
Yeah, do it more, bigger. So some of this Taurus energy may slow it down, but I'm just going to caution people about overspending. Certainly do what you need to do, enjoy yourself, have a good time. That's part of what May is about. But don't overspend, don't spend recklessly, because I definitely see some tightening of the belts later this summer. And usually when Indy and I talk, I try to keep it to that month. But so many of these energies are bleeding into other energies, and the results of things that we do in May, we may start to see in July, August, and September. So be thoughtful about your spending. I'm looking at Spain and I'm looking at Portugal and what they've gone through with this big power outages in two countries. And they're still trying to get things back on track, from what I understand. And when I did my predictions talk in January, I said, I get the feeling you need to keep some cash on hand. I said, just make sure you have some cash. And it's for something like this, something completely out of the blue, unexpected, where guess what? The ATMs aren't working. The cash registers at the grocery store can't take your card. The gas stations won't take your card. Sometimes when we're facing some kind of emergency, we need some cash on hand.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything horrible. Spain and Portugal are going to fix this and get through it, but we can get through it sometimes a little bit easier by having the resources at hand to help us navigate that.
Yeah. And also remembering that, as one part of living in this broader awareness or this more tuned in way is to know that yes, these things, the ups and the downs are happening, are going to happen, have happened, will continue to happen, but that we are more connected than ever as a planet and as individuals to all the help and resources and flow of the universe. So, yes, the same earthly things that have always happened are going to continue to happen, the same kind of 3D issues. But we have new tools within ways to deal with those things. And, you may notice that you're less attached to the earthly day to day. That's one benefit of having gone through a lot of things, right? Like we have over the past 5, 6 years. The benefit is you do develop a thicker skin for the ups and downs, and you do develop more stability within your connection with spirit, with what does remain the same, and with what does make things easier. with the discoveries we had, you know, through the COVID times and that we're still having through the challenges of the country and whatnot, that we are finding connection as communities. We're finding deeper connection with spirit, with our authenticity. So, just really maintaining that perspective. That's one beautiful gift of Taurus as well. That perspective. They're not easily rattled.
This is true. Taurus is very steady.
Yeah.
It's one of the qualities that I love the best about them. They're very practical, very down to earth, very steady, very loyal. If they give you their word, they're going to keep it. They're going to follow through on things. But we do have a new moon. Not new moon. Well, we have a new moon, but I was thinking about the full moon because the sun is in Taurus. When the moon moves into Scorpio, we're going to have a full moon because we're going to have the sun and the moon opposite each other. And that's going to happen around the 12th of May. And so Scorpio is kind of an intense sign. You know, Neptune is very laid back. They do have a temper. There's that phrase about what 95% angel and 5% devil, like that's Taurus. Because you meet a Taurus and you're like, I don't know what people are talking about. This is the kindest, sweetest, most level-headed person. But you move into that 5% and watch out, because they can have a temper. But most of the time they're very level-headed. But this Scorpio moon can push some buttons. So be aware that any kind of new moon or full moon is going to start to be felt by sensitive people. And quite frankly, most of the people that will be watching this podcast, I would label as more sensitive and aware than maybe the vast majority of the population. So you're going to start to feel this up to 3 days before and up to 3 days after. So we're talking about the 9th of May up until the 15th. You may feel especially emotional because the moon is all about our emotions, our sensitivity, and Scorpio is a water sign, super emotional, super intense. So our emotions go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. It's not like, well, I didn't like, that you did that. I don't do that again. No, now you're like, I hate you, and I never want to talk to you again, and you're always doing this. And, we can go off. We can go off the deep end because
Yeah.
Scorpio is extreme. Taurus is much more moderate. Scorpio does not know the meaning of moderation and does not want to learn.
Yeah, and I am getting that some truths may be revealed around that full moon, some emotional truths. So definitely just be aware of that it might be a time when you hear some emotional truth from someone, you're like, whoa, I had no idea that they felt that way. Uh-huh.
Absolutely. But remember, both Taurus and Scorpio are considered to be money energies in astrology. Taurus is the ruler of the second house of income and prosperity. And Scorpio is the ruler of the 8th house, which is considered to be like investments, spouses' money, other people's money, maybe the IRS, taxes, inheritance, money in other ways. Now, I'm a little wider on my interpretation of the 8th house. So I'm looking at that as my money and other people's money. So there may be some financial decisions that need to be made as this full moon comes up. And that's fine. You're going to be thinking about retirement and you're going to be thinking about savings and I want to get a new car and how much is that going to cost and what do I need to save? And so there are going to be things you're thinking about. What should my earnings be? What do I want my earnings to be in the next 5 years? How would I get there? Do I need to talk to my boss about a raise? Do I need to look for another job that pays me more? What kind of security do I want? Because quite frankly, often money and income and our level of abundance is tied to how secure we feel. And in a world right now which doesn't feel very safe and secure, we, we may want more savings or more money to kind of compensate for that unsettled feeling. So be aware. You may be dealing with some money issues. It may be you're doing just fine, but a grown child loses their job and they're like, Mom, Dad, can I borrow $10,000? Or can I, get my inheritance early? Or can you help me out this or that way? Totally up to you what you decide. But again, you have to start thinking about this. What if we give this child $10,000? What about our other 3 kids? Aren't they also entitled to $10,000? Do we have $40,000 to just give our kids? So it's about looking and deciding.
Okay. And the other thing I'm seeing regarding money, for these weeks ahead is to loosen up your perception of the ways that you can receive money. A lot of the readings I've been doing with people lately have centered around their frustrations that the abundance of the money is not coming in the way they think it's supposed to. So they're like, how do I get more money? And the ways that we think money has to come in are very limited in spirit's view. And this is going to be a month where the universe is really expanding our options around money and asking us to be open. For example, uh, in manifesting, sometimes I will ask, can you bring in a certain amount? And that's not, I didn't invent that. You can do that too. But when I do that, what I notice is that it very rarely has just to do with work and income in that way. It might be, that something, I don't know, something went wrong and someone needed to make it right. Or, the money can come in some other way. Or it was like, oh, wow, look at this thing that I sold that I had forgotten about, and I got a lot of money for that, or whatever. It always is something that my mind would not have come up with for that situation. And look at this. Just when I'm talking about this, Spirit brings out this card about lack mentality. So let me read this. It says, release any underlying beliefs that you may hold regarding entitlement and worthiness that may be blocking your ability to receive. When you have an abundance of wealth, both inner and outer, you will have an abundance to give and share with others. So, it's being in the flow and knowing that that means that exchange, that wealth, that flowing in and out can happen in all the ways in your life. It does not, you do not have, it's not a math problem where, this plus this is going to equal this. I guess it could be, but the universe wants more than that for you.
I'm going to say, I was just talking to India last week or the week before about us doing a class on manifestation because so many people are worried about so many different areas of their life, and this helps to give you control over those areas of your life. And so, and this tickles me because one of the things I'm constantly sort of reiterating to people is to be open to receiving. And most of the people hearing this, I'm open to receiving, I'm waiting to receive, I'm ready.
Where
But if
is
we
it?
think about it, we're open to receiving money from our work, our job, our livelihood, and we're open to winning money in the lottery. But other than that, we accidentally push it away.
Yeah.
A friend wants to take you out to lunch and you're like, oh, no, that's okay. I can pick up my own lunch. We're great at giving and not nearly as good at receiving.
Mm.
And I'm always preaching to people about this, like be open to receiving. And a couple of weeks ago, I was reading for a client, a lovely woman, a regular client of mine, and I was at her house and we'd finished her reading and she's getting ready to pay me. And she says, Susan, is something going on with you financially? And I was kind of surprised. And I said, well, there's been a few things I'm looking at. Is there some reason you're asking me this? And she said, well, Spirit was just speaking to me before you got here. And they told me I'm supposed to give you this money. And she handed me a check for $1,000,
Wow.
like completely out of the blue for no reason at all. This woman just decided to give me $1,000. And my initial immediate reaction, oh no, you don't need to do that. Keep your money.
And your guides are like, what are you doing, woman?
And I'm hearing myself say this. And my guides are like ready to hit me up the head, like, Susan. And it made me
Oh,
think of that when India is saying we have to be open to receiving in the ways that Spirit is going to give to us, not necessarily in the ways we've decided we're okay with.
yeah. Yeah. And when we do get kind of triggered or poked in that place of like, oh, I don't deserve this, or whatever the fear is, let's say a fear pops up where it's like, well, wait, if I receive this, am I going to be beholden to this person? Or if I receive this, am I going to feel guilty or whatever? It's just an opportunity to feel into things more rather than just going with that knee jerk no. Just be like, well, I have been asking, what if this is a gift? Let me receive it. And then what will happen is your guides, your higher knowing will confirm, yes, you're on the right track. You will get that, that bump that lets you know, okay, this was a good decision. And that sort of nudges you into more of an embodiment of being able to receive, because that's what we're really doing. Like when Susan said, I'm open to receiving. That is alignment. You're aligned with receiving. But then when you actually walk the walk, that's embodiment. And that's the part where we get to embodiment, we're like, whoa, maybe no, never mind. And that's the part to pause, feel deeper into, and rather than just instinctively kind of backing away, intuitively feel into what is my fear here? And is that valid in this situation? Yeah.
We think we're going to be happy with randomly receiving, but it can bring up all kinds of issues about feeling worthy and accepting and graciousness and equality. And so, really, money, finances, how we feel about income, savings, wealth, the rest of it brings up a lot of issues about power, control, leadership, worthiness, things that, on the surface are kind of hidden. We just think, oh, I want to buy a new car and I need the money for that. I want to buy a house and give me the money for that. But it's tied to a lot of other things going on. So we may be dealing with a lot of this in May. We may be looking within. We may be having all these issues come up. Because then remember, in addition to the full moon that may trigger some of this, we also have a new moon coming up right at the end of the year, end of the month. And we have a new moon at 6 degrees of Gemini. The full moon is at 22 degrees Scorpio. And so if you have planets, 6 degrees Gemini, 22 degrees Scorpio, they're going to get activated by this moon energy. But I like new moons. I like new moons better than full moons because I'm a Cancer and I tend to react really strongly to full moons because the moon is my ruling planet. New moons are when the sun and the moon come together. And so they're on the same page, they're in the same sign. So we get like a double dose of that energy. On the 21st of May is when the sun is going to leave the sign of Taurus and it's going to move into the sign of Gemini. So on the 26th, when this new moon comes in, the sun and the moon are on the same page in the sign of Gemini. And Gemini loves to communicate, loves to talk, loves to share ideas. If you're the parents of a Gemini child, you just roll your eyes trying to get this kid to focus on anything because their mind is going off in 10 different directions at once. And that's normal for a Gemini. They're interested in everything. So as this moon comes in, we may get interested in new ways of talking, new ways of sharing, new subjects. We may be asked to give a speech, do public speaking. We want to write an article with maybe a letter to the editor of the newspaper. We might think about all the social media that we use to communicate, podcast, the iPad, our phones, our computers, all the different messaging ways and text messages and landline phones and all the rest of how do we communicate? You may feel like going out and buying an iPad. Oh, I'm going to get this new communication device. You may find yourself talking more. If you've got a teenager, make sure they've got unlimited minutes because I'm going to tell you, they're going to be on the phone a lot. There may be more meetings. I know for those of you in corporate America, I'm so sorry, but there's probably going to be more meetings and the meetings are going to go on forever and they're not going to accomplish anything because everybody's just talking and talking and talking. But it's not a bad energy. We just have to make sure that we are listening as much as we are speaking. And
Yes.
that's the thing with Gemini. They're so eager to learn. They're so involved in this. They sometimes forget to stop and listen and absorb. So just give
Mhm.
yourself a little leeway there from maybe the 23rd to the 29th of May and make sure that your communication is in balance. And that's the best thing in the world.
Yeah. And another thing that has come up regarding all this Aries energy and Taurus and the real meets the fiery desire is speaking what is really important to you and sort of holding yourself accountable for how you're showing up in the world and in relationships. Uh, Another sort of way of embodying, like we were talking about with abundance, embodying, how am I embodying loyalty to myself? How am I embodying, showing up authentically? Susan, as always, you've always talked about the importance of being authentic, being truthful, and, just noticing, not with condemnation of yourself, but just from a place of, now, why did I leave out, how bad I've been feeling when that person asked me genuinely how I am? And why did I make that conversation all about them, or why did I dwell on the negative when I did talk? And just kind of, with a compassionate lens looking at those things. And can I show up a little bit differently next time?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I'm also going to say, because Gemini is so much about speeches and talking and communicating, we are probably going to see a lot more going on in the news. This is going to be the right side is speaking more, the left side is speaking more, the middle side is speaking more. It's it's not about coming together. Everybody wants to speak and nobody's listening. So we may hear more fiery speeches going on. There may be more, and this is not only politically, we may see this in terms of economic forum, and we may see this in terms of our business, and we may see this. This is a great energy for romance, for communication in romantic partnerships, because you
Mhm.
have to talk to each other. And sometimes you can get so busy and caught up. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like you're sort of listening with half an ear kind of thing because you got so much going on. So this is a wonderful time, but it's also a busy time when we can get distracted. So if you see yourself rushing around a lot, that like last week to 10 days of the month, it's like, oh, this is what India and Susan were talking about. Stop, take a breath, calm down, do some deep breathing. I'm going to tell you this is totally unscientific, but I find it harder for me to meditate when the sun or the moon is in Gemini because my mind is like monkey mind. It will not slow down. I have a hard time concentrating and focusing. And so when that happens, I focus on my breath and I do breathing more than trying to go into meditative state.
Yeah, that's smart. So you said the sun will move into Gemini on the
Mm-hmm.
22nd, 23rd,
21st, I think, of May.
21st of May.
So
Okay.
it'll be there like the last 9 days of the month.
Yeah, and that's a significant shift from that heavy earthly energy to that airy energy. It's one thing I really love about the shift of the astrological seasons is it's always going, from one element to another. And it's it's more rapid or more frequent than the weather seasons. So it's like we get that refreshing energetic change every month, of, oh, okay, so it's like if you're not enjoying one particular element that we're in, don't worry, it's going to shift soon. And as an air sign, I'm always, yeah, when we're going from that earthly Taurus energy to Gemini, I'm like, okay. And, and you probably feel the opposite if you're an earthly sign. You're like, oh, good, we've got some groundedness for a little while. And yeah. It's just,
So if you're an earth sign, the earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And you're going to enjoy the sun being in Taurus because that's going to support you. And just like India said, you're going to feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I've got a plan here. But as the sun moves into Gemini and the new moon happens in Gemini, if you're an air sign, and the air signs are Gemini and Libra and Aquarius, that's going to be a nice support for you. You're going to feel like, okay, I'm not struggling anymore. I got my thoughts together. I know where I want to go and how I want to share this. So when any of the planets are in a sign that is the same elements as our sun, that's a nice boost for us. That makes us feel good. It's like we're getting that same support, simpatico. The elements
mm,
are all simpatico with each other. And so we tend to feel better.
Yeah.
And the fire signs with this Leo fire energy and all this Aries energy we've been talking about, the fire signs are Aries and Leo and Sagittarius. They're going to feel like there's no stopping them. They're going to get a second boost of energy. Like, okay, we're moving forward now. We're not stuck anymore. So, in different ways, we're all going to be reacting to these new energies.
Yeah. And water signs, you're special too. Did we talk about them?
We did, but water signs is special too. They get their nice boost more in June than in May, but theirs
Yes.
is coming. So
Yours is
don't
coming with
get
Cancer
forgotten just
season.
because you're a water sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. Water
You
signs,
know?
especially Cancer's, just gotten beaten up these last few years. But
Yeah.
next month, and we'll talk about this more when we move into June, next month, Jupiter is going to move into Cancer. And that's a nice plus for the crab. So they're going to
Mhm.
really enjoy that and they're going to get a nice break. So your time's coming.
Thank you. And in our last few minutes, I want us to be able to share um, some some help. When we talk about embodying, we're all humans, and sometimes when we are using astrology or we're using divination through cards or any other way, or using our intuitive gifts, like Susan and I are helping people to expand theirs with our class that we're currently doing in intuitive development. It can feel like when you're starting or when you're practicing, it can feel like, man, if I just get all this right, life is going to be so easy. And, I'll have like the cheat sheet for, getting through life. And when we're talking about elements and astrology and shifts and energy and ascension and all the things, it can feel sometimes, I know, like, is this helping me, or is this just making things more confusing, or and it is like everything else, whether we're talking about looking at the weather or looking at politics, looking at health stuff, what's good for me health wise, looking at, like we were talking about, medicine and how to help your body. It's when you get into that headspace of the control. I'm trying to control my life by learning about all this. I'm trying to control the direction things go in. And the real secret, to sanity, I think, is to know that with spirit, with the universe, and with our own selves and our own hearts, we will never have that control. That is not something to be striving for. Control is not the universe's game. The universe spirit is like, oh no, it's change, it's expansion, it's growth, it's fluidity, it's flow. It's not control. Although there, and everything's going to be uh, this and yes, this and that. So it's not control, but yes, you will feel more in control when you surrender to the fact that you're not in control. But point being, even when you learn all of this, even when you use it all, you still will need to go easy on yourself, have compassion with yourself, especially when you're having those hard times, those struggly times, those times where it's like, being a human is very hard for me right now, and none of that is helping me. But the thing, like we talked about earlier in this episode, that will always help you in unseen and unknown ways that can't be predicted is asking for the help. Saying out loud, don't care if you're alone, it just doesn't matter the circumstances. I need help. I don't know the answers to this. I'm hurting, whatever it is. You will receive, whether it's through your own intuition, whether it's through something spirit sends in that you need, you will receive some help. And that really is the one thing I would say. All the other stuff is like icing on the cake. It's fun to learn. If you like to know what's happening, just like with weather or anything else, if you enjoy knowing it, some of us really, really do, and we get really into it, nerdy about it, like Nancy's. But if you don't, just know that that's okay too. You will receive every bit as much universal benefit from just saying, I need help. I want to feel connected. Help me. I'm open.
And I'm going to say, be consistent about that.
Yeah.
Most of the people, if not all the people watching this, are probably Americans. And Americans are the most impatient people on the face of the earth. We not only want it, we want it now, immediately. And when we are working with spirit, when we are working with our higher selves, we're not in charge. And that's sometimes hard for us to accept. We're doing things on spirit's time. We're doing things on a different timeline that we don't always have control over. So I remember when I was asking my spirit guide for their name, it took me a decade to get a name. 10 years of asking for a name. I finally got one. But by the time I got one, it wasn't important to me because I'd already established a relationship with my guide. Somebody else was asking their guide for their name, and they were talking to me, said, well, I finally got a name, Susan, but it took me 2 weeks of asking. And I was like, I'm going to slap you. Like they thought that was so long to get a name. So we're not always the most patient. It's like, well, I asked on Tuesday and I didn't even get anything by Friday. You have to be patient and you have to be consistent. Just because you're not seeing the results doesn't mean nothing is happening. So
Yeah.
continue to do what you know you need to do.
Yeah. And know that the struggles, the difficulty does not mean you're doing it wrong. One of the huge gifts and reasons I do love astrology and the things Susan's taught me about it is that it kind of provides context for the struggles you're going through. It's like, oh, okay, with these things in my chart, which tell me something about my soul path, it makes sense that I would struggle with this. And it helps. Same with reading energies through tarot or anything else. It's like, okay, well, here's the energy you're dealing with. Here's what you can't see. Here's what you might not be consciously looking at. And then that sort of, understanding it does help to put a framework around what we're experiencing. But it's not necessary because what you're experiencing is what you're experiencing, and that's the truth of it. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Susan. Well, I have loved delving into this season with you, and then we will reconvene in a few weeks to talk through June and Gemini season.
We have exciting months for May, June, and July. It's like change, 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 boom, boom, boom. So Angie and I will be here every month to talk about what's going on to help you navigate that the best way you can.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay.